Hey everyone, ready for a deep dive into something kind of spooky? We're going to be looking at horror films at the Oscars. You know those spine-tingling performances that sometimes, not always, but sometimes,
Yeah.
get recognized by the Academy Awards?
Right.
And it got me thinking about this with Demi Moore winning the Golden Globe recently for The Substance.
Yeah.
All this buzz about a potential Oscar nomination for her. And I'm thinking, how many horror actors have actually won an Oscar?
It's actually a pretty small group.
I know, right? It's surprising. You would think with how many iconic horror films and performances we've had over the years,
Yeah.
there would be way more.
I think so.
Like a whole graveyard full of Oscar winners. But the truth is, I mean, the Academy hasn't always given horror the love it deserves.
Yeah, that's true. It's almost like there's this invisible barrier between horror and what's considered Oscar-worthy.
Yeah.
I mean, even recently, Toni Collette in Hereditary, Lupita Nyong'o in Us, Florence Pugh in Midsommar.
Yeah.
All phenomenal performances, but no Oscar love.
It's weird.
It's wild. They were just too good at scaring us to get recognition.
Right.
But hey, let's focus on the ones who did get that recognition.
Yeah.
Let's celebrate those who broke through that barrier. Let's start our journey way back in 1931
Okay.
with the very first horror performance to win an Oscar.
This was Frederic March, right?
Yeah.
For his dual role in Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Amazing.
Think about this. The Academy Awards were just a few years old.
Wow.
And a horror performance takes home the top prize.
That's incredible. For those who haven't seen it, it's the classic story of Dr. Jekyll, a respected guy who creates a potion that turns him into the monstrous Mr. Hyde.
Yeah, and it was 1931, so you have to think about that.
Okay.
Early cinema, a lot of it was very theatrical, big gestures, over-the-top emotions.
Right.
But March, he brings this incredible subtlety to Jekyll's transformation. He doesn't just rely on makeup and special effects,
Yeah.
You actually see the struggle, physically, how the monster emerges from within.
I mean, it was groundbreaking for its time.
Truly. It really makes you think, why did the Academy become so hesitant to recognize horror later on?
Right.
Because even in those early days, it was clearly powerful enough to have those award-worthy performances.
Absolutely. It's like March set a precedent that unfortunately wasn't really followed for a while.
Yeah. Let's jump ahead a few decades to 1968 and another iconic horror film, Rosemary's Baby. Ruth Gordon won the Oscar for her performance as Minnie Castevet, the seemingly sweet neighbor, but she's got a sinister secret.
Yeah, Rosemary's Baby. This is where you start to see horror tapping into psychological fear.
Yeah.
This isn't about a monster jumping out from the shadows. It's like a slow burn.
Right.
The fear of losing control, the creeping dread of not knowing who to trust.
Yeah, you don't know who's on your side.
Exactly.
Remember that scene with the chocolate pudding?
Oh, yeah.
It's such a small detail, but it's so creepy.
Oh, totally.
It shows how good Gordon was at playing this character who's both charming but also terrifying.
Exactly. She's not this cackling witch or a monstrous figure. She's just subtle, manipulative, and she just gets under your skin.
Oh, for sure.
And all the more terrifying for it.
And her winning the Oscar showed that a horror performance, even in a supporting role, could get the Academy's attention.
Right. It was huge. Showed that horror can have these really unsettling, nuanced performances that deserve to be recognized.
And speaking of getting under your skin, let's talk about Kathy Bates.
Okay.
Her iconic role as Annie Wilkes in Misery.
Oh, yeah.
Which won her an Oscar in 1990.
She brought this Stephen King character to life and made her a total nightmare.
Right.
We all know how much people love Stephen King characters, and she just
yeah, they're so iconic.
turned it into this living nightmare.
Annie Wilkes, the obsessed fan, holding her favorite author captive.
Yeah.
So scary.
Because it's a fear we all have, right?
Totally.
That someone who seems totally normal can be completely unhinged underneath.
Yeah, you never know.
You just never know.
One minute she's sweet and caring, the next she's in a total rage.
Oh, it's scary.
And the scene where she forces the author to bring back a character he killed off in his book. Oh, my goodness.
Oh, wow.
A whole new level of fandom.
Yeah, for sure. It's not about the gore or the jump scares. It's that psychological terror of being trapped with someone who's lost touch with reality.
Absolutely.
It's intense.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
It's fascinating when you think about it, how these performances really reflect how horror itself has evolved.
Oh, yeah.
We've come from, those classic monster movies like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde to the more psychological like Rosemary's Baby and Misery.
Yeah, the way we even experience fear has changed.
Right.
Back then, it was all about the visual, that external threat.
Yeah, like Frederic March transforming into Mr. Hyde.
Oh, yeah.
All that crazy makeup, playing on those primal instincts,
Yeah.
the fear of the unknown.
But with Rosemary's Baby, it becomes more internal.
Oh, total.
It's not what's out there in the dark. It's the darkness inside us.
Yeah, and then Misery takes that darkness and makes it super personal.
Yeah.
It's not the supernatural.
Right.
It's a very real human obsession that can just snap.
But then we get The Silence of the Lambs, which won big in 1991, and that just feels different.
Yeah.
It's a whole other beast, like both Anthony Hopkins and Jodie Foster winning Oscars for their roles.
Yeah. That rarely ever happens.
Does it?
For a horror film, it's super rare.
Wow.
It's like the film blends that psychological horror with a classic thriller structure.
Okay, yeah.
You've got that cat and mouse game between Clarice Starling, played by Jodie Foster, and Hannibal Lecter, played by Anthony Hopkins.
I mean, Hopkins as Lecter, come on. So iconic.
Oh, yeah.
That chilling calmness, the way he just looks right through you. And he's only on screen for like 16 minutes.
That's true. That's what makes it so brilliant, though.
Right.
He creates this menace that just sticks with you. And it's interesting, he's won multiple Oscars.
Yeah.
But everyone always remembers him for Lecter.
Yeah, he really tapped into something primal, like something deep in our minds.
Exactly. And then you've got Jodie Foster as Clarice Starling.
Oh, yeah, she's great.
She's not just reacting to Lecter, she's engaging with him.
Right.
She has to confront her own fears to get inside his head and catch Buffalo Bill.
Such a complex performance.
Oh, yeah.
You see her dealing with the case, with a male-dominated world, and facing her own demons.
That's true.
She's not just a hero, she's a real person, flaws and all.
And the sound design in that film, it really adds to that tension,
Yeah.
Think about all that silence, how it builds that dread, that anticipation. And then you hear those sharp sounds, Lecter's voice, the dripping water in Buffalo Bill's basement.
Yeah.
It's all so unsettling.
It really gets to you. Not just jump scares, it's this constant unease, like something bad's about to happen.
Yeah, exactly. And then Black Swan, our most recent Oscar-winning horror performance, that takes the psychological even further. Natalie Portman won in 2011. She played Nina Sayers, a ballerina who goes mad as she prepares for Swan Lake.
That movie really messes with your head.
Yeah.
You can't tell what's real and what's not.
Yeah, the line between reality and fantasy is so blurred.
Yeah.
And visually, it's stunning.
Oh, yeah.
The director, Darren Aronofsky, he uses mirrors, reflections. It's all distorted.
Right.
Creates this feeling of being completely disoriented.
Yeah.
And Portman, she's amazing. Her performance is breathtaking. She captures Nina's obsession,
Yeah.
her vulnerability, the way she falls apart.
It's so intense.
It's really something.
And that ending, it just leaves you with so many questions.
So many.
Like, was it all in her head? Did she really become perfect? Or did she lose herself?
It's the sign of a great performance that she can make you feel all those things.
Right.
Her ambition, her fear, everything. It's a tragic downfall.
Okay, so we've talked about how horror has changed, how these performances pushed boundaries, and how the Academy has, well, sometimes struggled with horror. But where do you think this leaves the future of horror at the Oscars?
Well, these performances have definitely changed things.
Yeah.
They've shown that horror can be more than just cheap thrills, It can be art, it can be deep and meaningful, explore what it means to be human. And maybe, just maybe, the Academy is finally ready to embrace horror,
Oh, I hope so.
in all its terrifying glory.
It's crazy to think how these Oscar-winning performances haven't just scared us, they've, changed how we see horror.
Yeah, they've totally blown past those old stereotypes
Yeah.
about what horror can be.
Horror can be more than just blood and guts.
Right? It can tell powerful stories that really get to you, stay with you after it's over.
And it's not just the actors either, right?
Oh,
It's
dang.
everyone working together to make it so terrifying.
Absolutely. Think about Black Swan, all those mirrors and reflections. You're completely lost.
Oh, yeah.
Or the sound and silence of the lambs, how quiet it is, just makes those little sounds, like Hannibal Lecter's voice or the dripping water, even creepier.
Oh, yeah, so much creepier.
It all adds up to something you won't forget.
It's like they're messing with you, Not just showing you scary stuff, but building that tension.
Yeah, and these films go beyond just being scary, too. They're part of our culture now.
Yeah.
They make us talk about real stuff.
Like what?
Social issues, what it means to be human, all that.
Like Rosemary's Baby, right?
Yeah. Perfect example.
Came out during a time of big changes.
Right, all that anxiety about women's rights, who's in control, it was all there.
And Silence of the Lambs, that touches on gender too, and just the dark stuff people do.
Exactly. These films stick with us because they talk about stuff that's always relevant.
Yeah, like holding up a mirror to us, all our fears and anxieties, but it's fun too.
Right. It makes you think, but it's entertaining.
And you can see how these films influenced other filmmakers.
Right. Huge influence.
A new generation, pushing boundaries, finding new ways to stare us and make us think.
Totally. Horror's come a long way from those early monster movies. These performances, they've shown that horror can be art.
Yeah.
It can be profound. It can win awards.
So maybe Demi Moore will be joining that list soon.
Maybe. The substance is really something.
Yeah, exciting time to be a horror fan.
For sure.
As we wrap up our deep dive, here's something to think about. What is it about horror that makes us want more? Is it that adrenaline rush, like facing our fears? Or is it just wanting to know what's out there? Seeing those dark parts of us played out on screen?
Whatever it is, horror's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
It can scare us, make us think, even make us laugh sometimes.
It does it all.
And these Oscar-winning films, they show that horror, when it's done right, can be a truly unforgettable experience.
Absolutely. Well, that's it for our deep dive today.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Until next time,